instructive. But in any event, going back to, that's the first statement. The second statement, Michelle, if you can bring that one up. Oh, before I go there, I want to talk about a few more things for Mr. Waldman that you have in your pocket to be able to find additional malice with him. Remember, he's the one that after the UK trial went to the LAPD with a notebook full of things and tried to get perjury charges against Amber. The LAPD said, we don't investigate those things. But he then went to a German newspaper and said, Amber is being investigated by the NYPD, or the LAPD, for perjury. Do you remember that? That's malice. That's showing his intent to do harm to Amber. He also admitted that he speaks to that umbrella guy, and you'll see that one text in there from the person from TMZ. That umbrella guy is the big lead of Johnny Depp's, positive social media that is putting all the negative out on Amber Heard. And he also ended up getting knocked out of Twitter because he was abusing Amber. So now we'll go to the second counterclaim statement. And that is quite simply, this was an ambush, a hoax. They set Mr. Depp up by calling the cops, but the first attempts didn't do the trick. The officers came to the penthouses, thoroughly searched and interviewed, and left after seeing no damage to face or property. So Amber and her friends spilled a little wine, roughed the place up, got their story straight under the direction of a lawyer and publicist, then placed a second call to 911. Now this is May 21. Now, the clear implication here is that they're saying that Amber got together with her friends. They decided they were going to set Johnny up to be charged for domestic violence. And so they called the police, and they tried to make up this whole story, get him arrested, but the police said there's no evidence here, and went away, and they said, darn. And so they spilled wine, and they, busted up the place, and they called 911. They got advice from a lawyer and a publicist, called 911, and tried again to get Johnny charged. That's what this says. Now, we all know that's false, and it's heinously false. Because, after these events happened, and Ben talked about a little bit of it, but I'll talk about the rest of it, and I'm going to try to do it really quickly. But we all know Amber did everything in her power not to tell them who Johnny was, not to press charges, not to have him arrested. The exact opposite of this. But what were the facts of May 21st? He comes over, he's already been drinking, he's already high, and he is on a tear about feces in the bed from a month ago. And remember how Amber talked about when he gets into these drug-induced things, he gets into these paranoias, and he gets some idea in his head, and he just won't let it go. And that was his this time. There's somebody put that feces in the bed a month ago. That was his spin. So she gets Io Tillett on the phone. He's in New York at the time. He's going, they thought, this is ridiculous. Of course nobody did. And by the way, Boo has this huge problem. Of course it was Boo. He's always doing this. But Johnny just won't get there. So then they laugh. That makes him mad. Then he throws the phone at Amber. Amber screams out and says, ow, you just threw the cell phone at me. It hurts. Io says, Amber, get out of there. Johnny gets madder, pulls her hair, grabs her and starts hitting her. So Io gets hold of Rocky Pennington. She comes over as quickly as she can. She goes and gets in between the two of them. She puts her hands up on his chest. He pushes them down. And then she continues to stand in between them. And he's screaming loudly 10 times, Amber, get the fuck up. Amber, get the fuck up. Amber, get the fuck up. Loudly, loudly. Then his bodyguards hear this, they come in, they break it up. That's how that happens. But the next part of this, remember Josh Drew, and I think Elizabeth Mars was amazing in this one. Remember their testimony. After that, he goes and he has to, he always leaves a path of destruction as he's leaving. So he, bashes up things, and you saw Ben's pictures here on the picture frames, knocks things over as he's going, goes down the hallway, he's splashing the wine, he gets his bodyguards to let him into Penthouse 5. That's where Josh and Elizabeth are trying to help with Rocky's bead thing for the next day, and he comes in, storming in, and he says, get your bitch out of here, and he's got the big magnum, and he's mad, and Elizabeth is just terrified. She barely knows Johnny. She's met him 4 times, and she goes ripping out of there as fast as she can, and Josh gets out of there too. Then what does he do? He rearranges the furniture, or he might have knocked something off, one of the countertops or something. I think is the testimony of his bodyguards. But you saw the pictures. He went through and trashed that place again as he left. Now, the next part of this is the police coming. Io calls the police. He's in New York. He calls the New York Police 911. He's afraid they're not going to get there fast enough. He still remembers December 15 because he came in afterwards and saw all of the injuries on Amber and all the evidence. And he's terrified that Amber's still in there, the police haven't come, and that Johnny's going to kill her. So he calls a friend in L.A. and says, please call 911. We got to get somebody there fast. So she calls 911. So we have two calls, and you'll see the call summary. And the call summary shows those two calls really close in proximity here. So it's not them, we didn't get the first police officer, so we'll rough up the place and make a second one. You'll see that they're like 8 minutes apart up there. But it took 2 hours to dispatch the two different ones, and Amber never even had any idea that the second one was coming. The first one's come. And, we've talked about it. We've shown you the pictures. The police officers admitted that those pictures could very much have been what was there that night. Remember, Officer Haddon, it was his first week on the job. Officer Science was three years on the job at that point. They say, they told Josh that if she will press charges, if she'll give a name, we can file a report and make an arrest. She wouldn't do it. You did hear from Detective Sandanaga. That's the domestic violence. You recall Josh Drew saying that the police officer told him, she'll give a name, we'll make an arrest. He definitely said that. But in any event, she would not cooperate. She didn't want to. But Detective Sandanaga, their domestic relations or domestic violence person, said they should have done an incident report no matter what, even if they decided there wasn't a crime. Because domestic violence has the cycles, they come back, and it's good to have the record for the next time that it might happen. So she said they should have under the circumstances, even if they didn't. And she also said that when they put verbal dispute only in those calls, it is a code that they use, and you'll see that it's twice on that call report, so to say that's why we didn't write a report. But in any event, whether the police officers, forgot about it 2 months later when they were first asked about it, whether they just decided she's never going to press charges, and you'll see on the call report they're insisting that to the second set, it doesn't make any difference. The point is, this is still false. This statement is still false because Amber did everything but try to press charges against Johnny Depp. So they go away. And the testimony is that Josh and Amber and Rocky cleaned up because they have dogs, so they cleaned up a lot of the glass and the wine and those types. They had no idea the second police officers were coming by, and they certainly didn't call them, and they certainly didn't talk. They never talked to a publicist. She did talk to a lawyer who gave her advice, and that's why she wouldn't tell them, anything. She said, I'm not going to cooperate at all. So the second one's coming. You saw that. You've got the video cameras in there, and you see there's no effort by them to try to get now these officers to press charges against Johnny Depp. Just the opposite. Josh Drew doesn't want to even let him in the place. They come through quickly. Everything's fine. They wave. Everything's fine. Are they trying to press charges against Johnny? No. They're not trying to do anything. They're trying to get him out of there, which makes this statement 100% false. Was it made with malice? Absolutely. There's nobody that thinks that Amber tried to press charges that night. Johnny knew that. But the other thing that's very helpful and what you should look at is Defendants Exhibits 772 and 773. Because once again, the next day, Johnny apologizes to Amber. He says in two different text messages, that 772 and 773, he says, my profound apologies in one of them, and my apologies are eternal in the other one. What is he apologizing for the next day on May 22nd if he didn't know that he did all of those things? And by the way, remember Isaac Baruch even remembers the wine in the hallway. None of the police officers remember the wine. And that's because they're busy and they got a zillion other things going, and they didn't remember this call 2 months later when they were asked about it. So that's the next one. So clearly that's 100% false. Clearly they knew it. Clearly there's malice in making that statement. They're trying to suggest that she's manufacturing evidence with her friends to try to frame Mr. Depp. Nothing could be further from the truth on that one. And she did not want those police officers to press